Welcome to WellSprings. My name's Frank Zinni. My pronouns are he and him, and I'm truly blessed and honored to be serving with you here this morning as your worship leader. Each week, as we gather, we light a chalice to celebrate our common heritage as Unitarian Universalists and to remind ourselves of that deep inner spark that lives inside of each and every one of us and that we share with one another throughout our days and lives together, and that deepens our connection to each other. Today, I've asked my daughter Eden to help me light our chalice, and once we've done so, we'll say these words together. Hey, Eden, want to help me light the chalice? Can you help me with that? Here we go. Going. Yeah. What do you think? We light our chalice to celebrate the path lit before us, the warmth of kindness that shines from within us, and the radiance of wisdom that is shared between us and that never goes out. Good morning, and welcome to this week's online service. Our mission here at WellSprings is to be a community charged full with the charge of the soul. I don't know about the rest of you, but this is the first time in my life that I'm afraid to leave my house, that I'm afraid of other people. Heck, I'm afraid of my own family, none of whom has been sick in the past 12 weeks. I'm sure that many of us are growing weary of the restrictions that bind our freedom. Perhaps we're sad at the loss of physical intimacy that is so natural to us, or we're sad at the loss of someone we love. We may be frustrated by our vulnerability to something unseen, seemingly small and simple and even insignificant. If you're like me, what we've been enduring for the past 12 weeks may make it hard to connect with the charge of the soul. We may wonder, why us? Why now? We may feel that what we are experiencing is unusual or unique or unprecedented. I know I've had these feelings over the past 12 weeks. And what helps me, what grounds me in the charge of my own soul, is the awareness that I am part of a much bigger story over a very long period of time. My situation is not unprecedented. My situation is not unique. And when I step away from my vanity and my arrogance, I recall the suffering of others, of other generations, and the joys of other generations. I see that this time of suffering will pass and flow into a time of rejoicing. When I step away from I and I move toward we and us, I am charged full with the charge of the soul. Even though our community is gathering virtually right now, there are lots of ways to get connected and stay in touch throughout the week. You can find phone numbers and email addresses for our ministers and staff, along with a ton of other information on our website at www.wellspringsuu.org. You can connect with us on social media. You could search WellSprings Congregation on Facebook or WellSprings Oasis to find our private Facebook group. On Twitter, you can find us at WellSpringsUU, and on Instagram, we're at WellSprings Congregation. There's a link in the video description you can click on to sign up for our weekly email newsletter. That's a great way to make sure you never miss any of our online offerings, like programming for kids, meditation, and drop-in hours with our ministers. And it goes without saying, but especially these strange and difficult times, to please reach out to us anytime, anywhere. We are here to help. We are here for you. I have only one announcement today, and it's about the Youth Spirit Yell. So many people have said how much they love having the chance to see each other's faces on Sunday morning in the Youth Spirit Yell part of the service. We can't share these shout outs and we can't share these videos unless you send them to us. So please remember, you don't have to be a kid. Send us a Youth Spirit Yell. These are intergenerational. They're greetings from and to everybody at WellSprings. So no matter what your age, please record a 10 to 20-second greeting and send it to Youth Spirit Yell, one word, youthspirityell@gmail.com. At WellSprings, the foundation of everything we do is found in the power of connection, making space in our hearts and our lives for each other. Now, this is the part of the service where we honor that connection by offering one another a greeting. We may not be able to hug and shake hands with one another right now, but there are many ways for us to connect and offer each other greetings. If you're watching this live on Sunday at 10, you can use your laptop or phone or tablet and type a greeting into the chat window or on the side of your screen. You can drop into the WellSprings Oasis group on Facebook with a greeting, or snap and share a photo of yourself watching at home. Perhaps you want to text a friend from church or make a plan to call them when the service is over. You can also join us for online coffee at 11 right after services on Zoom. The link for that is also in the video description here. Making space to connect with each other each Sunday is a reminder to make space to connect with others in our lives, to ground our relationships in that connection. Perhaps take some time this week to reach out to someone you haven't talked to lately. Connect with someone in your life you've not spoken with in a while. Take a few minutes now to greet someone here. I'm going to spend a few minutes in the Oasis group during our service. I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you for sharing all those warm greetings. I want to invite you now into our time of generosity, a time to reflect upon and to express our gratitude for the role that WellSprings plays in our lives and the lives of the larger community. Now more than ever, if you feel the value of our community in these times, we hope you'll share a gift with us. If you have a smartphone, you could pick it up and text in capital letters WSPRINGS to 73256. That's 73256. There's also a link to give online in the video description below, and you can go to our website and give there as well. We cannot thank you enough for your support and all the ways that you give to WellSprings. Just as we've taken time to share the energy of connection among us and generosity beyond us, we want to now take some time to ground in that deep and soulful energy that is inside of each and every one of us, that divine spark, the inner light that we share with others throughout our lives together. And we could do this very simply and elementally by taking a breath. We inhale and we exhale. We breathe in and we breathe out. There's nowhere else to go. There's nowhere else to be. So let's be here together now. We follow these words from Thich Nhat Hanh into our time of mindful silence together. If we want to enter heaven on earth, we need only one conscious step and one conscious breath. Let us cultivate peace and experience presence together in this quiet time. wherever it is you are, however it is you are feeling, whatever it is you're doing. Remember that peace and presence are always as close to you as is your own breath. May this be so for you in this moment. May it be so for you in this day. May it be so for you in the days to come. May it be so for all of us. When we gather in person, this is the time that we usually dismiss all of our kids to their time together in Youth Spirit. But these days, Youth Spirit is meeting on Zoom every Sunday at 9 a.m. So for now, let's see if we have any shout outs to or from this week's Youth Spirit. Hey, Miss Carol, are you there?
Send us your Youth Spirit yell from here or from here or here or here. Play us a song. Or from here. Maybe from your favorite TV spot. So, no matter where you are, we'd love to hear from you. Send us your 20 to 30 second video greeting to youthspirityell@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from our fellow WellSpringers and see your smiling faces. Hope to hear from you soon.
I got troubles, Lord, but not today. 'Cause they gonna wash away. They gonna wash away. I got sins, Lord, but not today. 'Cause they gonna wash away. They gonna wash away. I got friends, Lord, but not today. 'Cause they done washed away. They done washed away. Oh, I've been crying. Lord, I've been crying. No. We get along, Lord, but not today. 'Cause we gonna wash away. We gonna wash away. I got troubles, Lord, but not today. 'Cause they gonna wash away. This old river's gonna take them away.
Hi, everybody. It's good to be connected with you in this way again. And I want to start today by talking about connection and by noticing just within myself, and maybe you notice this as well too, I'm using social media a lot more than I used to, and I used to use it a good clip. And it's not all compulsiveness. It's not just all because of the anxiety and uncertainty of this time, although probably some of it, if I'm honest, is compulsiveness, the amount that I'm on social media. But it's something deeper. I'm on social media a lot because of the desire for connection, because all the ways in which we used to be able to connect with each other have changed or been taken away outright. And with social media, as imperfect as it is, as honestly destructive as it can be at times as well too, it still is such a primary mechanism by which I find I get to connect with all of you and people I care about all around the world. And so I kind of really treasure the social media time these days for that opportunity to connect. And given my kind of twin professions, ministry and psychotherapy, I get pitched a lot of ads, and a specific kind of ad, a lot of books and a lot of trainings. And sometimes I have to restrain myself, like that well-known meme says, like, like clean all the things, like it says. I have to restrain myself at times, like, no, I will not sign up for this training. I will not on instinct buy this book. Let me read the books I already have. But one book was advertised, and has been advertised fairly frequently in my newsfeed on Facebook recently. And it had a title that made me really notice. The title was Be Happy Forever. You have my attention. And then the subtitle goes, Get rid of sadness, fear, anxiety, anger, and stress. Get rid of sadness, fear, anxiety, anger, and stress. Now, I believe anger, fear, sadness, anxiety, and stress can be really destructive forces in our life. And so it's important that I think we be really skillful by them. I like to believe they can be in the car, but maybe we don't want to give them the steering wheel. It's important to unhook from these things and use what they tell us skillfully. But get rid of them, kick them out, never experience them again. I think that's really unwise and unhelpful and actually kind of not fully human. These feelings are here for a reason. They're not accidents of our evolution. They serve a purpose. I noticed a couple months back, I think it was right around the time the pandemic started, that I was, because of the number of upsetting, unjust, unfair, sometimes very cruel things in the world that were happening, I was hitting that anger emoji reaction and the sadness emoji reaction. I was hitting those two very frequently, and I wondered, am I getting hooked into so-called negative emotions too often? But then I took a step back, and what I put in this post is that actually it's a cue. It's an invitation for me when I press that anger emoji reaction or the sadness one, that actually it's an invitation. Notice that what I'm sad about or angry about are things that I care about. That those emotions and feeling them are invitations to deeper love. And as Tom Waits said a long time ago, I think in a song that was released when I was 2 years old, he said, if I exercise my demons, well, my angels, they may leave too. And so I think it is important to, take ourselves whole, especially including these challenging emotions. And I think right now we are all getting a crash course with all the ways that our lives have changed. The saying goes, we're all in the same storm. We're not all in the same boat. Some people have this time incredibly rough, profound difficulty and financial anxiety. And for some of us, it's about that sense of disconnection or loss or missing people. We can all have different responses to this experience of this pandemic that really has upended pretty much all of our lives. And so we are getting this crash course right now, working with challenging feelings and emotions, loss, sadness, grief. And I think it's actually exhausting to want to get rid of those emotions. And I also think it's unwise for what I mentioned before, that when we listen to these emotions, what we will find very often is what we care about and who we care about and what we love, and an opportunity to connect into those values and into those people once again. And I think there's an additional cost of spending all this time and energy getting rid of so-called negative emotions that do serve a purpose. It's that it's a form of declaring war on ourselves. And war has casualties. And when we declare war on ourselves, we are one of those casualties, the people who are harmed. And I also think wanting to get rid of very natural human feelings, is also at odds with our Universalist tradition and the sense of largeness, inclusiveness, welcoming love that defines what this tradition is about, and from which the title of this series gets its name, Love the Hell Out of This World. One of the first teachers of Universalism was a guy named Origen, Origen. I always have to remember to spell it correctly, who lived in the 2nd and 3rd century of this, our common era, CE. And he was declared a heretic. He was looked down upon by the forming church that declared his teachings not orthodox enough. And one of them, the most controversial ones, in which he played out the logical extension of this belief that God's love could ultimately redeem all creatures, all of creation, nothing and no one left out, is that Origen said it could be, maybe even it would be, that Satan, the devil, quote unquote, would be redeemed as well too, ultimately reunited with that source of love from which all created creatures come. And so it's interesting that part of our Universalist teaching, at least this teacher, says that it's even possible to love the hell out of hell. Actually, I don't want to aim that high today, and the truth is I don't believe in literal demons or literal devils, but I do believe that we all can experience what we might call demonic, that kind of overpoweringly painful or negative parts of ourselves that we can feel ensnared in. So I don't want to aim that high of promising to love the hell out of hell. What I want to explore today is the invitation that comes when we don't reject the negative feelings, painful thoughts, that in fact it is possible to love the hell out of ourselves. This is part of some of the oldest stories we have in humanity, and leaving aside the really problematic ways that gender is expressed in so many different fairy tales, you see this story over and over and over again, a variation on this theme, that frogs with love, with a kiss, turn back into princes or princesses, or that if we scratch the surface of every beast, there's a human being there waiting for love to help transform them back into the full version of themselves. This is the problem for me of wanting to get rid of the negative, perhaps even scary parts of ourselves, is that if we spend most of our lives wanting to get rid of, dividing up what we deem about ourselves is acceptable versus unacceptable, if we spend most of our lives dividing ourselves up, taking ourselves apart, if we spend most of our lives dividing ourselves up, I think we end up cutting ourselves to pieces, causing ourselves real harm. And so instead, learning to love the hell, the most difficult parts of ourselves, out of ourselves, is more a matter not of extinction or eviction, certainly not extermination, but of integration, of allowing loving kindness and compassion to be turned even towards those parts of ourselves that sometimes are not very kind or even harmful to ourselves and other people, and to recognize that if we really want to transform ourselves from harmful to helpful, even healing, that nothing does this like the integrating power of loving kindness, bringing our parts back together into whole relationship with all of us. One of the best stories, the best recent stories about this, is the Pixar movie Inside Out from 2015. I preached on it before. Miss Carol has, I believe, used it in Youth Spirit. And just to remind you what the story is about, it's about 11-year-old Riley, who on the outside part of the story, the kind of regular world part of the story that comprises a decent portion of Inside Out, we see her moving from a small town in the Midwest to San Francisco. And there's a lot of loss associated with this for her. A lot of sense of dislocation, of no longer knowing her people, her tribe, who she belongs to, a place where she was comfortable and loved, into a place that is big and scary and in which she does not belong yet. So that's the outside part of Inside Out. But really where the drama of Inside Out happens is, if you remember the movie, it's in Riley's own 11-year-old head, where we meet 5 characters, 5 primary emotions: joy, sadness, anger, fear, and disgust. And the primary tension in Inside Out, within Riley's head, is between joy and sadness. See, joy wants to kind of rule the roost. Joy wants to be in control and give all the other emotions their walking papers, because it's understandable. We want to be happy, right? But here's the thing. Joy ends up being a kind of terrible dictator. She's really intolerant of the other emotions, especially sadness. Joy has what we could call, and what we learned through the course of the movie, as almost a kind of toxic positivity. In the same way there's toxic negativity, there's toxic positivity that wants to kind of eliminate the so-called negative emotions and feelings. And we see on the outside of Riley's life, in the real world, at least the animated real world, that when joy will not allow sadness to have its say and rejects it, that Riley's process of honoring her losses and her sadness and her grief, which might allow her to integrate into her new location and experience healing, when joy does not allow sadness to have its say, Riley suffers. In fact, at one point even abandoning her new home and running away. This is what happens when we don't allow ourselves to listen to sadness or loss or shame, like Brene Brown has been preaching right at our hearts for, God, no, I think a decade already she's been doing this. That when we won't allow these things to have say, it really does cost us. When we divide ourselves up in this way, we do end up cutting ourselves to pieces. And so when I watch Inside Out, for me in my head, it almost feels like there's a 6th character, unnamed, not explicitly, almost a 6th sense, if you will. And that for me is the integrating power, which is a power of loving kindness, of self-acceptance, that mediates between all the parts: joy, sadness, anger, disgust, fear, invites them all in and gives them a place, and lets them know that they are all welcome. Inside Out is merely, simply, a wonderful variation on a very, very old teaching, as old as the Persian poet Rumi's The Guest House, as old as a story from the Buddhist tradition that often is rendered or called Inviting Mara to Tea. To give you just a little bit of background on this, the night when the Buddha sat and achieved his enlightenment, his full awakening, he was assailed by all of these forces of doubt and lust and temptation by sometimes what is called the demon god Mara within the Buddhist tradition. Most modern Buddhists, or many at least, interpret that not as something external to us, but a part of our own minds that isn't very skillful or isn't very wise, or leaps at instant gratification, or believes that we're fully separate from other people and from this life. And so Buddha sits through all of these temptations, all these ways that Mara is poking at the Buddha, with a hand that points down, touching the earth, and a hand that raises up in a sense of friendliness and welcome. He sits through it all, and he awakens. But that's not the end of the story. It's not like he defeats Mara once and for all. Mara keeps coming back throughout all the rest of the Buddha's life. And some of the people around the Buddha get very anxious by this. But Buddha actually does something different. The Buddha invites Mara to tea as an honored guest, pouring Mara tea, letting Mara know that Mara is welcome here too. I love this kind of strength that is kindness, that really disarms this capacity for rejecting ourselves or dividing ourselves up. I think that the ways that we can do this, when we recognize that when we get triggered by our own difficult emotions or delusions, or the feelings that we don't know if we can allow ourselves to feel, or the difficult thoughts that hook us. I think that sometimes it is as simple for many of us of just closing the eyes, taking the breath, feeling the body connected to the ground, feeling ourselves solid upon this earth, and maybe just even speaking to ourselves in kind ways. What is here, inviting ourselves to face it. And there's a particular way I want to share with you that I find really skillful and kind of creative. And so I'm going to ask you for a moment, if you would, maybe just to close your eyes wherever you are, if it's safe for you to do so. I'm going to close my eyes. I'm going to ask us to think of someone, some creature, some being who maybe the tone of their voice, but maybe they don't even have a human voice. It could be a character from a movie or from a TV show, but someone, some creature who, when we think of them, and maybe particularly the tone of their voice, it has a tone or a sense of presence, of warmth and accepting kindness. The sense that we really are acceptable to them. And I'm just going to ask you to pause with that for a moment. Notice what comes up for you. If you can invite this creature, this being, this person, here into your mind's eye and hear their voice in your head, soothing, warm, kind. And just notice the effect that that has on you. And the practice here is to utilize this sense of voice directed towards ourselves when we feel really triggered by difficult thoughts or feelings, and to learn to talk to ourselves in this kind way. One of the people who regularly shows up for folks when they do this exercise is Mr. Rogers. Most frequent person named when I work with people, and they name whose kind voice that is. And I think of Mr. Rogers' most famous song, I like you as you are. Imagine saying that to ourselves. Maybe some of you already have that practice when we're triggered and when we're tripped up and when we're judging ourselves, or when the harsh inner critic or the imposter syndrome voice shows up and we're calling ourselves a fraud and we're wanting to divide ourselves up. What's acceptable, what's rejected. And instead of taking ourselves to pieces, might be able to say to ourselves, as Mr. Rogers did with his tone of voice, maybe even if that works for you, I like you as you are. We might connect with what the great psychologist Carl Rogers said when he said the paradox is that when I fully accept myself, then I can change. And so I want to end with a story today that I don't even remember where it came from. I don't even remember the first time I heard it. I think it comes from a Middle Eastern tradition, but I don't really know which one. But it's a story of a man who has been unjustly accused and imprisoned for a crime that he did not commit. And he spends most of the first days, weeks, months, years in prison, raging, by the way, justified, because he is in prison unjustly, raging against his situation. And he finds that although it's justified, it's also making him miserable and deeply, deeply feeling badly about himself and raising his stress. And at one point he has a friend who sends him a gift. And the gift is a prayer rug. And the man who's been imprisoned really says, what the hell am I going to do with a prayer rug? And he kind of puts it into the corner angrily, and he goes on feeling miserable about all these unfair, unjust things that have happened to him. Until one day, out of a sense of desperation more than anything else, he lays out that prayer rug and he lays down on it and he sobs. And he feels a small sense of release and relief by giving voice to these painful emotions. And he starts to make it his practice, bowing, prostrating himself on this prayer rug day after day. And They become weeks and then months and then years. And what he finds is that as he lays himself down on this prayer rug, sometimes saying no prayer at all other than just feeling his body, he reconnects with what he misses, and he reconnects with what he loves, and he remembers who he was before he was imprisoned, and he connects back into his own heart until after these years pass by and the prayer rug is starting to be worn down in places, and he notices something woven into the fabric of the prayer rug that he did not notice when it first arrived, that there is this copper wire woven into the fabric of this prayer rug, this place where he lays his sadness, his anger, his fear, his love. And he finds that he can pull the copper wire out and fashion it into a key, and he unlocks his cell, and he is free. So many of us have struggles these days. I know I do. I know you do. I hope that in the midst of all this difficulty that we will give ourselves the invitation to look deeply at our own hearts, at our own pain, to look deeply enough to reconnect with what we love, not in spite of the difficulty, the sadness, loss, anger, grief, but seeing that we only have these emotions in the first place because we have hearts capable of love. Amen. And may you live in blessing. I invite you to join your heart with mine in prayer. God, Spirit, presence of our heart's deepest yearning. May we recognize that even in the midst of struggle, of sorrow, of loss, of grief, of distress, that there is a voice within us waiting to be heard. A voice that is asking a question. Do you remember who you really are? Do you remember what you really love? May we all incline the ear of our hearts to listen. Not listen in spite of the difficulty, but listen to it. And get reacquainted and reunited with that voice of love that was there all along. Amen.
Bring them all in, bring them all in, bring them all in, bring them all in, bring them all into my heart. Bring them all in, bring them all in, bring them all in, bring them all in, bring them all into my heart. Bring the little fishes, bring the sharks, bring them from the brightness, bring them from the dark. Bring them all in, bring them all in, bring them all in, bring them all in, bring them all into my heart. Bring them all in, bring them all in, bring them all in, bring them all in, bring them all into my heart. Bring them from the caverns, bring them from the heights, bring them from the shadows, stand them in the light. Bring them all in, bring them all in, bring them all in, bring them all in, bring them all into my heart. Bring them all in, bring them all in, bring them all in, bring them all in, bring them all into my heart. Bring them out of pearl, bring them out of store, bring them out of hiding, in, bring them all in, bring them all in, bring them all into my heart.
And now we extinguish our chalice, the chalice that was lit so adoringly by Frank and baby Eden today. And as we extinguish this chalice, may we affirm that although this light goes out, the light does not. And together we say these words. As we release this flame from its faithful service today, we allow the spark in each of us to burn on, to warm our compassion, to fire our delight, to light our paths today, tomorrow, and always. And may you be well, my friends. May you be safe. Please take care of yourselves and each other. Bye-bye.